Today on This Week in Iowa, the passing of the Chief Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court, Mark Cady, a man remembered for his compassion, empathy, caring, and kindness, not just as a jurist, but as a husband, father, and friend. Then we explore recent Iowa polls in the presidential race, a trend among them. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Iowa. I'm Sabrina Ahmed. Mark Cady served on the Supreme Court for 21 years, starting in 1998. He served as Chief Justice of the court from 2011. He authored the court's opinion of Barnum versus Breen, which legalized same-sex marriage in Iowa, though his impact extends far beyond that. He passed away suddenly in Fort Dodge on November 15th. He had a heart attack. In an emotional goodbye last week at Drake University, family, friends, and colleagues gave tribute to a man who dedicated his life to service. This Week in Iowa's Rachel Droz was there.
What words shared over a period of a few minutes can possibly capture the essence of a life so rich with purpose, meaning, accomplishment, and impact?
Humor?
He liked a fresh pressed shirt. You think he can make a ruling in court? He is a Michelangelo with a steam iron.
And tearful memories.
I don't think he fully understood how much of a mentor, role model, and inspiration he was for me. I wish I had told him.
As family and friends say goodbye to Chief Justice Mark Cady. One story shared had to do with an old putter Cady refused to give up. After a bad round, Cady's friend of 40 years, Mark Brownlee, suggested he traded in for a newer model.
His simple response, I can't. My family gave me this putter for Father's Day. Enough said.
It was through these stories the public saw a clearer picture of the man that led Iowa's highest court. And it was the man behind these stories that made saying goodbye so hard.
With that, Mr. Chief Justice, I rest. So shall you, my great friend.
Joining me now on the sofa is Justice Edward Mansfield. He's been on the Supreme Court since 2011, been a colleague of Justice Cady since then. Justice Mansfield, first of all, we are so sorry for your loss of not only colleague but friend. And we would love to take some time just to reflect on who Justice Cady was as a human being. So can you tell us first, what was your reaction when you heard the sudden news?
Shocked, dismay, disbelief.
And moving forward, since the news came on Friday, how have you felt?
It has been difficult for all of us in the building. We had on Monday morning a group meeting of the entire building. Everybody turned out, and there was a lot of crying, and it was very quiet. There were opportunities to talk, but many people just weren't even ready to talk about it.
So give us an idea. We saw the story of the funeral. People painted a picture of him as a jovial man, someone who, while rather serious when being a jurist, he was rather funny and liked to have a good time. How did you know him personally? What did you think who was he?
He was someone that you would want to go have a beer with. In fact, I often did. That was the kind of person he was. In court conference, when the seven of us would get together, he knew how exactly at the critical moment to kind of crack a joke about each of us. That was just his nature.
What was it like to work with him in a professional atmosphere?
It was a tremendous experience. I learned so much from him. He was, I think it was Chief Justice Ternus who mentioned this, he was perhaps the most deliberate decision maker on the court. And that tested all of us and kind of raised all of us by making us do our work.
And as a friend, you said that he could crack a joke, you'd have a beer with him, but what was he like when you were in social settings? Kind of describe his demeanor for us.
I would say he was, if it was a public setting, he was always proper, but never aloof. You know, a lot of judges are aloof, and here was the most powerful judge in the whole state of Iowa, and he was never that way.
Do you think that was lost on him, that he was the most powerful judge in the state of Iowa, one of the 50 most powerful, or 51 or so in the country?
I don't think that was something that he dwelled on. Whenever we worked together in court conferences, his attitude was always court first, and the court really works for the people. We don't represent the people, but we work for the people, and he never forgot that.
What was the most important thing, would you say, that he did in his tenure as not only the Chief Justice, but also a justice on the Supreme Court?
Well, it would be hard to single out one thing. Let me try and talk about a theme. I would say he brought the court to the people, and if I could take a minute, I'll on several different levels. One was we literally went out to the people. Since 2011, since he became Chief Justice, we've done court on the road, literally left Des Moines, gone out to about 30 communities around the state to have court sessions at night so that people can come and watch their Supreme Court in action, often in a case that's connected to that particular county, to that particular community. Another way in which he brought the court to the people is just the way he wrote his opinions. If you read a Chief Justice Cady opinion, you'll often see in the last couple of paragraphs he kind of pushes all the legal stuff and the law books away, and he just writes in simple language, straightforward language, communicating with all of us in Iowa, here's why the court is deciding what it's deciding. And that's something that I think has really caught on with the rest of the court. We've tried to do the same thing, to recognize that our opinions, especially now in the days of the internet, go out to everybody. Everybody reads them. They aren't just written for lawyers. And another way, I think, in which he's changed the court is, he has been a very forceful advocate for civil rights, particularly civil rights under the Iowa Constitution. You know, we have a U.S. Constitution, and we have an Iowa Constitution. And the way in which he's done it has been, I think, powerful and influential. It's not just the court decides there's a right, and that's the end of the story. He always has felt that he needs to engage with the public. He wants to persuade everybody that this is why the court is doing the right thing in this case. He wants to engage in a dialogue with the public. So that's what I'd say, bringing the courts to the people.
Justice Mansfield, thank you so much for taking your time to share stories about such a wonderful man.
Thank you.
We'll take a short break, everyone. Coming up next, we sit down with an Iowa Supreme Court expert. Insight on the key cases of the Cady Court and the evolution of the law while Cady was on the court and his time as chief. Stick with us.
Whether you bleed Cardinal or Black, Cyhawk Game Day is gold. It's the best place to hear stories and analysis of the Cyclones and Hawkeyes. Sports Director John Schaefer, the Local 5 sports team, and analyst Jeff Woody talk impact of last week's matchups. They break down the strategies and keys to the game.
Mike Rose, he's my key number 3.
What it'll take to get your team the next victory, and who to watch for to make the big plays on the field. You've got tailgate plans. Watch Cyhawk Game Day Saturdays at 10:30 on Local 5.
The Dish voice remote just got even more powerful. Why'd we put so much technology in there?
You don't think I've watched a lot of football?
You want to put a little wager on it? Bet.
So you can settle that bet without ever taking your eyes off the game.
How many D1 football teams are there?
What you do with that power?
Oh, it's gotta hurt.
Well, that is totally up to you.
Don't look so sad, man. Come on, we're having fun.
New Dish voice remote with the Google Assistant. Dish, tuned into you.
Panera's new warm grain bowls are full of good. Full of flavor, color. Full of good. So you can be too.
Oh my God.
Try our new warm grain bowls today. Order now on Uber Eats.
I'd wake up in the middle of the night and my phone and the camera is recording.
Private details shared without consent.
Your photos, your text messages.
How to know if you're being tracked and how you can stop it. Secretly Stalked, tonight after the American Music Awards.
This month on Grit.
You're a coward. You killed him.
Bliss, I'll stand with you against anything, but I can't fight you for yourself.
Go ahead. Make your play.
Do you shoot as cleverly as you talk?
Well, here's my word. Get off my spread.
Your friends have a high mortality rate, Frank.
I think we should rob more banks.
I'm going to let it go down the drain without a fight.
Grit Television with backbone. From the capital city, you're watching This Week in Iowa with Sabrina Ahmed, getting to the heart of what's happening in Iowa politics.
Welcome back, everyone. Joining us now is Rox Laird, an analyst for the Iowa Supreme Court. Rox, in the next segment of our show, we're going to discuss Varnum versus Breen, which, of course, is the case that Justice Katie authored that legalized gay marriage in our state. But first, we want to discuss other cases that Justice Katie was involved in and will have a great impact on our state for many years to come. So to get started, can you just kind of give us an overarching theme? What was Justice Katie like as a chief?
He was a man who was genuinely liked by everybody he met. This came out yesterday at the memorial service.
Sure did.
Where people of every walk of life sort of felt like they knew him. So he exuded that personality, that warmth. And then as Chief Justice, he made a really important decision from the very beginning that he was going to try to bring the court to the people. So they would hold several times during the term, each year, they would hold oral arguments in different cities around the state. So, I mean, he just really believed that the court needed to tell its story to the public.
So how did that differ from perhaps other past chiefs of the Supreme Court?
Well, I think it really became clear to them that they needed to do that in light of the public vote following the Varnum decision, that they were not making the case to the people, you know, what the role of the courts are. So it's not that they were less transparent in the past, it's just that it really wasn't that clear that it was that important of an issue. And Katie truly got that.
Okay, so when you and I were preparing for this segment, we spoke about three maybe monumental issues that you wanted to be sure that we brought up. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the Chris Godfrey case. It's a lawsuit against Governor Terry Branstad, former Governor Branstad, then governor, claiming that his firing was illegal. The court in this decision said for the first time that parties can file civil lawsuits for violations of rights under the Constitution. So can you talk to us a little bit about what this case was, why it was so important, and why Justice Katie had such a big impact in it?
Right. So the Katie case has got a lot of attention just because of the issues involved in the Godfrey case. I mean, in terms of why he was suing the governor, why he felt he was wrongly fired, etc. But this question that came to the court was, can you bring a civil suit against another party based on a violation of your rights under the Iowa Constitution? They had never said that before, and so this opened up a whole new avenue of civil suits in Iowa.
And what kind of impact could that have? What do you see it doing in the future?
I mean, as the minority justices who dissented in that case said, it could have a huge, that case will have a huge impact just on basically the business of the courts.
Okay, the next issue I'd like to talk about is abortion. The Supreme Court split 7-3 on this, holding that there is a right to abortion under Iowa's Constitution, striking down the 3-day wait period. Why did Justice Katie have a big impact in this case?
Well, again, I think this is one where Justice Katie made a very articulate case for the right of women to make this decision without the government imposing upon them this 3-day waiting period. And he went back to what the U.S. Supreme Court had said earlier about undue burden on women's rights. And, you know, this is sort of a thread through a lot of his writing, was individual liberties, you know, that were protected against government intrusion.
Now, another issue that isn't necessarily one specific case, but it's multiple cases, and it all has to do with juvenile sentencing. How did Justice Cady deal with juvenile sentencing, and what will the impact of that have?
What I would say is that juvenile justice was an issue that was close to Mark Cady's heart, outside of the courtroom as well as in. And he talked about this issue a lot when he would speak to the legislature each year. He felt that, you know, it just was almost impossible that you couldn't give a juvenile another chance in life. Mm-hmm. So the court, over a number of years, made it difficult, if not impossible, to sentence juveniles to life in prison without parole, or to mandatory minimum sentences.
And that, of course, will have an impact on perhaps many juveniles who will come through the court system.
They will get another chance in life.
All right. Rox Laird, thank you very much for sharing some insights, some facts with us. We really appreciate you being here.
Glad to be here.
We'll take a short break, but coming up next, gay marriage legalized in Iowa, the impact this case that Cady authored has on an entire community and the rest of the country.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. By wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers right away. If you're testing your blood sugar 4 more times per day, injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call the Diabetic Health Hotline today and learn about the latest CGM technology. Not only can a CGM immediately reduce pain, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. And if you have Medicare, you can get a new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. We'll also provide free shipping of your new CGM, and we'll bill your insurance company for you. If you are testing your blood sugar 4 more times per day and injecting insulin 3 or more times per day, or using an insulin pump, call now and learn how to receive your new continuous glucose monitor at little or no out-of-pocket cost.
An alcoholic father.
My dad would punch me.
That's something I don't remember doing.
You wouldn't, you were drunk.
A terminally ill mom.
Have you headbutted your mother?
No.
What's the bruise on your head now?
I slammed my own head.
Against what?
A bedpost.
So you were bashing yourself in the head?
I assume the show was about them, and I come here and it's all about me.
Trust me, this is so not all about you.
New Dr. Phil.
Monday at 4 on Local 5.
Not in Kansas anymore.
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
You represent the Lollipop Guild?
You have no power here.
Now be gone before someone drops a house on you.
Follow the yellow brick road.
I don't care. Because.
Oh, I don't care.
I'll get him for this.
And his little dog, too.
There is no place like home.
And for great TV, there's no place like Cozy TV.
You're watching This Week in Iowa, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Iowa.
We are joined now by Courtney Reyes, who is the new executive director of One Iowa, here to break down the Varnum versus Breen decision that legalized same-sex marriage in Iowa. Justice Cady, not chief at the time, authored it in 2009. Now, what does this opinion demonstrate? First of all, Courtney.
Justice Cady was an incredible human being. I think that's what the first thing that it really states. But he looked at the law in a fair and impartial way. He was really a student of the law, as all of his colleagues and friends described at his service the other day. And it was really important to him to break it down and see what this is really about and how do we protect the folks of Iowa, which impacted the LGBTQ community in a great way.
And what was also said at the memorial service is that he not only wanted it to impact people, but he wanted it to be accessible to them, to be able to read and understand. Why was that so important? So that anyone could pick up this opinion written by a justice of the Supreme Court of Iowa, read it, and grasp what it's telling them.
Because it had impact on actual people's lives. Then when I went back and read it last weekend, I was just kind of blown away of how easy to read it was. I'm married to an attorney, and so those words can get pretty legalese very quickly. And I could see myself and my family in those decisions, and that was very, very powerful.
Now, what kind of impact does this case that Justice Katie authored, what kind of impact does he have on the rest of the country?
It sets a standard. Marriage equality was brought to Iowa for the main reason that our Constitution was written in a way to be challenged, and that's a really good thing, so that folks can always be getting what they need and surveying folks in the most equal way. And so when you become the third state in the nation for marriage equality, that's saying something. It's making an impact here in the heartland. We can do that, and we can make that happen.
But this was a controversial decision, and while Justice Katie retained his seat, 3 other justices did not. So what kind of implications does this have?
For sure. I believe that when you stand out for equality, you often can be punished for that. And I am so very grateful to those people who said this is the right thing to do, and they believed it in their heart, and it cost them their jobs. Because folks outside of our state dumped a lot of money into making sure they weren't retained. And so that became a really scary and volatile place for folks at that time. So we are so very thankful for that court system that can continue to put fair justices on the bench.
And we should note that it was a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court of Iowa to legalize same-sex marriage.
Yes.
So what's your message to people sitting at home who think, oh gosh, the Supreme Court justice, the chief of the Supreme Court, he died. It's very sad, but I don't know him. What's your message that you want them to take home?
That he was an incredible human being, that I feel like a one-of-a-kind. As I sat and listened to story after story, I was reminded of, wow, this person had equality and fairness at every breath that he took. And that's an incredible legacy to leave behind. And I was really inspired to continue to fight for what's equal and do the next right thing. And just if I can honor him in the smallest way, it would be a really great deal.
Definitely a call to action that we could feel from the memorial service. Courtney, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
We really appreciate your time.
Have a great day.
We'll take a short break, everyone, but we'll switch gears up next and talk about the current surge in Iowa polls for Mayor Pete Buttigieg, where the other candidates stand.
Hi, I'm Chris from Fireplace Superstore. Fall is upon us and fireplace season is here, and you need one of the brand new Heat and Glow gas fireplace inserts. They're the perfect retrofit for that old wood-burning fireplace that you're not using. You get beautiful flames, you get heat, you get easy operation, and they're all brand new Heat and Glow gas fireplace inserts. Please come see us, Fireplace Superstore, 109th and Douglas in Urbandale.
I know people love the dish remote. It's great. So why build in the Google Assistant? I mean, who really needs a TV remote that can turn the thermostat up,
Change temperature to 72,
the lights down,
dim the lights,
and still access their DVR?
play real.
Actually, some people could absolutely use a remote like that. The new Dish Voice Remote. Dish, tuned in to you.
It's a secret nearly a century old, a mystery they'll have to literally dig up.
She learned how to make whiskey from the bootlegger.
There was 300 gallons a day made on this farm.
Feds raided the wrong farm east of them. They didn't want to go to jail. They buried everything.
Glass bottles.
What uncovering the legendary rye barrels could mean.
Only barrel of 90-year-old spirits in the world.
See what these whiskey makers actually find.
1929. It's looking like the bottom of a still.
Legendary Find. Watch the series now on weareiowa.com.
It's your voice and your vote. No matter your choice, decisions of politicians impact your everyday life. That's why Local 5 asks the tough questions.
You guys knew about this last year. Why not fix the program last year?
Uncovering the facts so you can make the right choices for you.
How do you close the wealth gap in our country?
From the State House to the Capitol, your legislators and candidates can affect real change. Know what their plans could mean for your family. Get local politics alerts straight to your phone. Opt in today for custom alerts on the We Are Iowa app.
A trend in Iowa as polls continue to show South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg breaking through as the Democratic frontrunner in our state. And support for Senator Elizabeth Warren dropping nearly 10% in the past month. At the same time, the percentage of likely Democratic caucus goers who do not want Warren to get the nomination jumped up by 5%. This all according to the latest Iowa State University Civics poll of likely Democratic caucus goers in Iowa. Mayor Pete takes the lead with 26% 26%. Warren drops to 19%. Support for Senator Bernie Sanders at 18% and former VP Joe Biden at 12% did not change since the last poll in October. Now recall an Iowa poll earlier this week echoed the same sentiment. A CNN Des Moines Register Mediacom poll of 2,000 likely caucus goers shows Buttigieg with 25% support. Coming in behind Buttigieg is again Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Tied for third are former VP Joe Biden and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. Then rounding out the top five in this case is Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar. Buttigieg reflected on his success he's had so far.
You know, starting with Labor Day, I felt a level of energy at the steak fry that told us that we had a chance to really connect. I think the debates have served us well. Our speech at the dinner recently was another chance just to lay out what I think so many Iowans and so many Americans are looking for.
Buttigieg's current poll number is 16% higher than it was in September. Meanwhile, Buttigieg is on the rise in Iowa, but to put things into perspective, we wanted to show you the national standings. Real Clear Politics offers an average of the three most recent national polls. Biden is still in the lead nationally, Warren in second and Sanders in third, with Mayor Pete in fourth. Senator Kamala Harris rounding out the top five. We'll be right back.
Your water softener needs salt. You buy it, lug it, pour it, over and over. Save salt and the hassle with a Culligan high-efficiency water softener, the world's best. Click or call Culligan Water and start saving today.
Feel your devices come alive. Speeds from 100 meg up to 1 gig. Stunning streaming video. Unbeatable power. Wi-Fi on blast. 99.9% network reliability. 100% incredible. Switch to Extreme Internet 100 today for $34.99 a month for 1 year. Call 844-EXTREME2.
Instead of going to school every morning, what if school could come to you? Because learning happens anywhere and everywhere. K-12 powered schools provide a tuition-free, full-time, online public school education. It's public school at home. K-12's curriculum is designed to engage students, to challenge them. So visit K12.com today. Tuition-free in Iowa.
Tamron Hall has America talking.
She is a really good listener.
Asks the right questions. On the next Tamron Hall, Patti LaBelle. She's music royalty, a multi-talented performer and actress, and an entrepreneur with good taste. And I can tell you firsthand, Patti knows what tastes good. We're in Patti's kitchen. Find out what the godmother of soul, Patti LaBelle, has cooking for the holidays on the next Tamron Hall.
Monday at 2 on Local 5.
You want to see positive news stories celebrating our community, but maybe not receive alerts on crime or politics. You can with Local 5's We Are Iowa app. Just opt in for positive news alerts. It's the news you want with customized alerts on the We Are Iowa app.
Thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Iowa. We are taking a week off so that we can be with our families to celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday. So we'll see you again in 2 Sundays. Have a good weekend, everyone.